This is Synopsis, a series of conversations with composers on their compositional practices in the framework of Abeceda Institute. I'm Neža Zupanc, and the guest today is Fernando Egido Busevin. Fernando, welcome, and
Thank you.
please say a couple of words to introduce yourself.
I'm mainly a composer, and for me, it's very difficult to introduce myself. And basically now I'm making works with electronic music. Okay, so with this is what I'm focusing right now.
So how long have you been composing, if I may ask?
Since 90s.
90s.
A lot of time ago.
So we're talking decades of composition.
Yeah, sure.
And is it also the composition that you specialized for in your school, or did you before study or work in some other field?
I actually work as IT manager. Okay, I don't
IT manager.
I don't work in the music field. I can make my living with composing, and I don't teach music. So my really living is IT manager. I work in a university, but not teaching. I work in the IT manager club. And I have changed a lot in the time, so I love changing. The idea of making always the same thing is not something quite interesting to me, because the fact that I am not making my living out of composition makes me really free to change and to do in any right now what I really want to do. So I'm completely free. Okay, the fact that I don't professionally live from composition makes me completely free, in fact.
And I think why it's important for, let's say, the listeners to hear about your other specialties, such as IT management, in your composition. There's a lot of work with, if I recall correctly, artificial intelligence at this point, or could you perhaps yourself just tell more about that?
In fact, it's just the opposite. So I became IT manager because of being composer. Because when I was studying with José Luis de Delás, that was my main teacher, he said to me that my handwriting was terrible, and that José Luis de Delás was a composer quite that gave really a strong importance to handwriting, which is not common nowadays, because today everybody writes with the computer. But back those days, it was quite common that all the school composers, like for example, like José Luis de Delás, like the handwriting. Okay, so he told me, your handwriting is really terrible. So I think that in your case, it will be a very good idea that you could make your scores with the computer, so they would be a little more clear. That's when I began to use computers, and this is the reason why now I am IT manager.
So if I understand correctly, I didn't catch some of the words. You were steered towards working on computers, with computers, by your mentor due to the bad handwriting.
Exactly, that's the real thing. From a historical point of view, this is the real fact.
And what exact work were you doing on the computer at that time? What was that subject?
Writing scores with the computer.
Writing scores?
Yeah, simple as that.
So basically, you kept on your studies of composition. however, notating the compositions on a computer, which in 90s, how developed was that in the 90s?
Really, really very good, because this is from a computational point of view, this is very simple. You don't need not a very heavy technology to do this. So even in the 90s, there was a very, very good technology to write in sports. Okay? So no really big news about writing music with computers. It's exactly the same 30 years ago.
Well, there's still then, this gap between notating on a computer and becoming an IT manager. How did that then lead to the other?
Okay, during 2 years, I was teaching in a superior conservatory, and I have problems there. And just when they fired me in the conservatory, I found I don't know how to say in English, approved to enter in a university as IT manager. I applied and I succeed. It's as simple as that. Yeah, and since then I work in the university in the IT management section.
Fascinating.
And exactly.
Composition?
Computer music in the conservatory.
And what was the subject that you were teaching in the short time?
Composing with computer and electronic music.
Interesting. So that's all right. And then this is where you stayed, and as well, composition is where you stayed from then.
Yeah.
How would you describe the influence of technology in your composition? Where everywhere did it have come to have impacts?
Very, very high influence. I will say that one of my most important commitment in composition is technology. Okay, and that's because I think that the main thing about creativity today is our relationship with technology, how we create new things with technology and AI. So I think that when any reflection about creativity today, and for me the most important thing as a composer is the creativity, how to become a really creativity, making new music, is the relationship between which one is our creativity and which one is the creativity that the technology can bring to us. Okay, so now we are really clearly competing with technology. Right now there are really, really incredible technologies that can create very, very high levels of music. So now really I think that now humans is the first time in the humanity that humans are facing the reality that some machines can be can be most creative than ours. So this is my most important point of reference in the reflection of what is the creativity, and from this point on to make music and compositions.
And when speaking of how greatly important creativity is for you in composition, how would you, also with as someone that has compositional kilometers behind you, what is your conception of composition, and what is your conception of music?
For me, the most important thing as composer is the reflection about musical tensioning based on cognitive process and not in the material properties of musical materials. Okay, this is my main concern about composition. How to make
process then?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Instead, usually, for example, when we are dealing with tonal music, we are going to make music in which the musical tension is going to be depending on the pitches and what I really want to do is a new kind of music in which all the tensioning process are not relative one concrete properties of material. They are not related to pitches, not related to dynamics, and so on. So this is my personal research, and I think that is relating this with what I said before. One of the most creative things that we can do today precisely is this. So create new forms of music that are based only on cognitive process and not in process derived in the properties of traditional musical materials.
And you were speaking of pictures.
Pictures. Sorry, no pictures.
Pictures.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay,
sorry, my pronunciation is horrible. Sorry.
No. It's good. I'll just clarify from time to time. I see. Okay, so to pitches, and therefore you define, or at least treat composition the way you practice it in distinction to what could be called the traditional, or in your words, tonal music. So you are focusing on this difference, on a different part of it. And where does music enter here? What is your conception of music?
As I tell you, for me, the main aspect of music is what is really a creativity applied to music. This is my first preoccupation about music, and from my point of view, if we want to create a really creative music, we need to think about a new form of musical material that do not depend on their properties of material. Okay, and this is what leads me to the concept of cognitive dissonance. My music does not work in the traditional concepts of dissonance, so it works in the concept of cognitive dissonance. Okay, that is what I mean when I'm talking about that. What I really want is create works in which the musical tensioning is cognitive and not derived in the dissonances of materials. As not only in tonal music, but for example in serial music as well, there was some kind of processes that were based on the properties of materials. Okay, so even in serial music, there was not a questioning of the tensioning of the music based on the properties of musical material. Okay, so my proposal is as well as provocative against tonal music and against the serial music. For instance, serial music was really committed in the traditional concept of dissonance. The difference between tonal music and serial music is in tonal music, we are going to make only a limited use of dissonances, and in serial music, they are going to make a very intensive and use of dissonances, but they are saying the same concept of musical tensioning based on traditional dissonances. And in a traditional concept of dissonance, dissonances based on the properties of materials. For example, second is more dissonant than a third. Okay, they share the same background, curiously, and I think that today making creative music in our cognitive world implies using processes that are not dependent on these kind of dissonances, but on cognitive dissonances. Okay, which is this topic is really a very complex topic. I have written a book in which I explain this very, very, very slowly, and I talk about this. Okay, but basically, what is generating the tensioning process is not the alternation of dissonances and relaxation of dissonances that in serial music or in tonal music, but instead on the processes that the brain is generating. Okay, if the brain understands what is happening, it's going to be relaxed. If the brain doesn't understand what is happening, it's going to make a conflict, which is going to generate a tension. So in my music, the tension, it is not produced by the musical materials, but it is produced by the cognitive process and the conflict in the brain about if he is understanding or not the music. This is what I mean about cognitive process instead of material process. And it is not a problem of tradition or contemporary music, because serial music is also relying on the old concept of dissonance for materials, okay? Not in cognitive processes, as I am doing right now, or I'm trying to do. Okay.
Well, so if I understand correct, it's through composition you create music in which the highest importance is to create cognitive dissonance, which generates attention of the listener and
exactly.
And
that's the thing. Exactly. This is my memory set, and in each word I try to find a new way of doing this.
Of doing that.
Okay.
So it's obviously then, you know, because in the midst of your explanation, I already wanted to ask you, but why not cognitive consonance? And the answer to that is because, in your words, consonance, if I understood correct, is what relaxes, and dissonance is what tenses, and tension is what you seek for. But then another question, before we continue, of course, on this path, have you ever considered the cognitive dissonance that is generated on the grounds of music as we know it, where the consonants and dissonance are defined in the canonic terms?
Yes, you are completely right. The cognitive dissonance exists forever. For example, Beethoven was a master in cognitive dissonance as well. Sure, okay, no problem about that, because it is impossible to separate the cognitive process with the material process of music. That's a very good criticism about what I'm doing. I share this completely. I do agree with that.
Not even a critique, it's just a question primarily.
Yeah, but for example, Monteverdi was a great master of cognitive dissonance. So you can find a lot of compositional strategies in traditional composers that are really focusing more in the cognitive process, really, that in the material properties. That's quite clear. For example, in Beethoven, for example, or in Monteverde, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But you can focus directly on this. Absolutely. The difference is that now we have a lot of knowledge, explicit knowledge. Cognitive science have make a very great develop in the last 20 years. So we have a lot of new knowledge, and we can use all this new knowledge to apply it to music. Okay, so I am doing this in a very more explicit way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
And before, where we came to was the point of where attention is created in the human cognition. Is there still next steps? Why is there a reason why you want to reach that point of attention?
This is a very interesting question, and the answer will be really, really long. But basically, I think that if you want to create new music, this is a very easy way to make things. Okay, because there is not too much people that is working on this field. It's really quite new. So there are a lot of new possibilities. So it is really easy to be creative with these ideas. Okay, at least for me. Okay, if you told to me, please make me a serial work, probably I will not be very creative doing this. If you told me, please make a tonal work, probably I will not be creative in making a tonal work, but I can do a very creative work with these new ideas. So for me, there is a really a great relationship between the possibilities of new creativity and working with cognitive dissonance. Okay, and there's also a very interesting question, or that in the cognitive dissonance is something that is quite relative, because it happens in the side of listening, not in the side of writing. So it is up to the listener to create his own meaning of the word. Okay, so this is something that really interests me a lot, creating some kind of music in which the meaning it's going to be only in the listener, and it's completely up to the listener. For example, if you have a little memory, you are going to interpret my music in a very different way than if you have a very wide or a very big memory. Okay, so in order to that the cognitive processes that I am proposing in my music work, they rely in that the cognitive systems of the person that are listening my music are quite different, and in fact, and relative to the way in which these cognitive systems are configured, they are going to interpret my music in a way or another completely different. Okay, and when you are making a traditional music tensioning based on the properties of materials, this is some quite objective. So everybody is going to feel the same tension, more or less. I do agree that this is quite relative as well. But in the cognitive music, this is much more relative. Okay, so what I'm trying to create in my music is a process that is going to create conflicts that are going to be really, really different between one person and another. And I want the only thing that I want to make is the process that is going to create a very different reading in the side of the listening. Okay, so. And this only happens if you focus only in cognitive process and not in the properties of the material. from my point of view.
Yes. This now really reminds me of the composition that Abeceda Ensemble recorded. That was your composition. Could you perhaps elaborate on top of that performance? What were the specific ways in which you applied this theory to that composition?
Well, in my book, I explain this in a very detailed form. So, and it's free. You can, everybody that can download my book for free. So, I have a video presentation about that. If you want, we can share with.
If I can offer, when you address cognitive dissonance, and when I hear the beginning of that recording, I immediately experienced a strong cognitive dissonance, which was, why would you do that sound on the piano if you can do it on the cello?
For example,
is that like something that you literally placed there with that intent?
Well, in this particular work, what I was trying to do is that there is researching about the relationship between the size of the memory and the recognition of patterns. In this work, I have all the time two simultaneous patterns that are working in a very deterministic way related, and they are overlapped. And if you have a very slow or a very big memory, and working, I'm talking about the you know that we have different kind of memory. We have an image and a window of immediate memory. So it's what you are retaining in real-time memory, and we have a long-term memories. Okay, so in this work, I am focusing only in real-time memory, which is approximately dependent on each individual from 8 seconds to 50 approximately seconds. So my idea in this work is, depending on how long is your real-time window of memory, you are going to be able to recognize the overlapping of patterns or not. And this is going to generate some kind of tension, some kind of conflict, which is going to be completely different for each individual. This is what I was trying to obtain in this particular work.
And these, you said, deterministic relationships between patterns. They're quite complex in terms of time.
It's really easy. It means that it's quite simple, and it is that the relative position of the phase of one pattern between the other is going to determine which one are the values of the traditional notes. For example, if I begin the pattern and the notes of this pattern begin in the, for example, in 90 degrees, they are going to be multiplied by a certain quantity. This is the deterministic process. I don't think if I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but there is a very the real notes, the real value of the notes, it's determined by the overlapping of by a very simple mathematical formula. It is not quite complex.
Well, but the formula can be simple, how about the sound?
Yes, but the variant is sometimes really a simple process is really difficult to understand to a variant, and this is what is going to create the tension in my music. So in my music, the tension is not depending on the traditional consonances or dissonances, but instead it depends on the conflict about understanding or not the music. So there's time when the brain says, oh, I can understand what is going on. And suddenly you don't, okay? So this is what is generating the musical tension in my music.
So,
or at least this is what I want. I am not completely sure if I'm.
So understanding the music or the composition is, let's say, quite a factor that you observe in realization, in performance of a composition, if I'm correct.
Completely correct.
Have you made research on these reception factors by people that listen to it?
No, unfortunately, I don't have enough fundings to do a research in a very scientific way. Okay.
Okay, just a curious question.
I would like to do that.
Yeah.
Okay? This is a really great idea, but it requires a lot of funding. So, and this is this is very difficult.
So if back to the composition written for abeceda, what was it? Parametric. What was the name of it?
Parametric formalization studies. Okay.
So through the title, you sort of hint already at what is going to be happening on the cognitive level. Even though, if I understand correct, title more refers to your composition process and intent. However, you mentioned that the primary observation can be steered towards recognition of patterns, right? In that composition. And that's, let's say, the specificity of that composition, while perhaps in some other work, the primary focus, the attention will be steered towards something else, if I'm understanding you correct.
Exactly.
Is it more formal? Can you, in this context, can pattern be called a parameter?
No.
No, pattern is simply a formal structure.
In the context, pattern can be used in a very different ways in different musics. For example, my concept of pattern is quite different. For example, that the concept of pattern in the music of Morton Feldman. There are a lot of different concepts of what a pattern can be in music. Okay, in my case, a pattern is simply, in fact, it's just only one note. Okay, which is repeating again, but it's only one note, or a superposition of several notes. Just simple as that. For me, a pattern. But the exact parameters of those notes are related to other notes that are repeated in another pattern. Okay, so it's a very simple concept of a pattern. It's the more basic thing that you can think of when you think of a pattern. It's simply a note that is repeating. And if we have a pattern as a note that is repeating, and if we have another pattern with another note or another event that is repeating, and the exact parameter of one of those patterns is related to the other one and determined by the relative position.
So this also brings, I guess, to a question of terminology. And with that, something I really wanted to ask you was about the theory, about the theoretical part of however you term that, whether it's a part of composition, whether you consider it its own part of the discipline, or I will be curious to hear, say, for you, was it at some point inevitable to write theory for your composition?
Exactly. That's the reason why I wrote my book, because I needed to explain my new theories in a new frame. Okay.
Yes.
And the problem about terminology is a very serious problem. Okay, when you are making a new thing, it's very difficult to select which word are you going to use. It's very complicated, because if you use a new word, you are it's very problematic, because people is going to be completely lost. So sometimes, from a pedagogical point of view, it's easier to use words more popular to people, or at least that have a historical meaning in music. And in the last 4 decades, the concept of pattern is quite popular. The concept of pattern is also quite important from the point of view of cognitive sciences. So cognitive sciences use a lot the concept of pattern in a very different forms of ways, which is and this is the reason why I used this word. Okay, but
because of its prominence in cognitive sciences.
Exactly.
So that's another branch, another science that you sort of, I mean, study, incorporate. How do you treat cognitive science in connection to your work? Is it you're on top of the, let's say, new research in, let's say, a certain small field there?
I have not enough mediums to make a serious research about any topic by myself. Okay, so
sorry, pardon. I meant reading and
exactly.
studying.
So I'm applying the knowledge that cognitive scientists are creating to make new form of musical processes that are relying completely on cognitive processes. Okay, so what I'm really making new is not new knowledge based on cognitive sciences, because I do not have a laboratory. I do not have the possibility of make really serious investigation or serious research about this topic. So the only thing that I'm making is using this knowledge to create new musical concepts. But I'm not researching.
And creating new musical processes, how does that exactly look, and how does that work when always you can correct me if I'm wrong, but somehow if you work in let's say Madrid, where you're at, or in Amsterdam, or in Ljubljana, or or in Milan, you'll be probably working with music professionals that will be performing your works, and these music professionals come with a certain skill set, which is usually a skill set of as a result of studies at a university, music studies at a university. So what I'm saying is, how does this look like? Attempting something completely new, very different, with using the same, let's say, musical body or education, a same skill set as was used for music of traditional music. At least
Well,
in
I think that
years.
the vocabulary is the same, so there is not any problem. So when I put a score to a musician, this is quite clear. Okay, no worries about how this has been made. It's not important. So if the musician is a good professional, he's going to play what is in the score, and it doesn't matter how it has been made. Okay, it is not important. From my point of view, we share a common vocabulary, and we can rely, or we can, in this common vocabulary. So I'm writing, when I wrote scores, I use a very traditional notation, so there's no problem. I think that the musician is going to work with this music, okay? But it's true that sometimes some musicians have the obsession with control, and if they don't understand exactly what they have in the score, they feel a little bit uncomfortable. But this is, for me, really interesting as well, because this generates as well some kind of tension in the interpretation itself. Okay, if a musician don't feel comfortable with the score because he is afraid he's not understanding perfectly what he's going to play, he feels a little bit confused, and it is going to have a very great influence in the way in which he or her is going to perform the work. And it is very interesting to me, okay?
So the confusion will have a great influence.
Yeah, sure.
So a big influence on
this is another way of the cognitive dissonance, but this time in the interpreter side, okay? In fact, now I'm working in the concept of live notation. So in my last works, I'm using live notation. So the musicians receive in their mobile the notes to be played. And so they are really, really scared. The last concert, for example, in Seoul, the last concert I have, a saxophonist was playing a work of mine, and he was really terrified because he didn't know what he was going to play. He was really obsessed by the control. The saxophonist need to control everything, and he was really, really scared about this. Okay.
So you sent the score to their phone just?
Yeah, in the last composition I'm doing right now, I am using systems of live notations in which the musician, it is not going to know what he is going to play or what she is going to play until 2 seconds before. This is one of the things that I'm now working with, which is live notation. And for me, what is interesting about that is that this has a very good relationship with the tension in the interpretation, okay? So, and with the, what is going to happen in the performance, okay? And I like this tension in the interpreter as well, okay? Because for me, this is what can really bring a new form of creativity, which is the main focus for me, is precisely that the performance cannot control what is going to happen. Okay, and
so you're basically integrating what was used to called prima vista reading into
exactly,
the performance.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, uh, up to some extent, it's very clear why a performer would be almost obsessed with control, since in so many cases that's what made that performer be and able to perform, right? So then the response to a composition that perhaps seeks to actually use that in a different way is sometimes yeah, just confused a little bit.
Yes,
I
but
understand that, yeah.
but the actual sound which is going to result from this processor, it is going to be really different. Okay, so if you try to control everything, nothing new is going to happen, because you are going to be completely following what you think that how things should sound. But if you cannot control this, is when creativity is going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the most important things in my last works is that there is the generative process that are going to create the notes that the interpreter is going to perform are going to be generating by a feedback system with the attendees in the concert. So there is going to be a circular reference in which the generative system is going to be controlled by its own verification. Okay, there is going to be a relationship between a generative system that is going to be evaluated by the attendees. So the generative system is going to be it's going to change according to its own evaluation. Okay. So for me, creativity is going to arouse of this feedback, continuously feedback between the attendees to the concert, which are going to really compose the work in real time, and the performer that is going to receive the notes in his her mobile phones. Okay, and this is for me what is going to guarantee a new concept of creativity. How we can be creative? The only way I don't like this expression. One way of trying to make really creative things is that the attendees to the concert are going to evaluate the music, and the music is going to react and change according to the evaluation that the own attendees are doing in real time. That's what I need, a live notation system that reacts to how the attendees are reacting. And this is what is going to guarantee that the result is going to be creative, or at least this is what I believe. Okay.
So with many with there being a mainstream line of how artificial intelligence will replace musicians, how could ever AI create such cognitive dissonance as that performer on the stage does when you send him the score 2 seconds before the beginning?
I don't know, but this is a very really interesting question. For me, if there is a feedback between the generative system and how it is evaluated by the attendees to the concert, this is something that by now cannot be replicated by conventional AI. Okay, AI now is focusing on machine learning systems, and machine learning needs something that really exists a priori. But if you are evaluating in real time a new word, it's you are not relying in a background of data. Okay, you are creating new data. You are not only replicating as a generative system, traditional data, you are not relying on a set of scores, but you are really creating new kind of data in the performance itself. That is the evaluation that the attendees are creating during the performance. Okay, this is my thinking about AI and how we can compute, make new things with these concepts. Okay? I don't know. Obviously, sooner or later they will be able to do that as well. This is quite clearly, but I think that by now this is a interesting solution, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I also in my compositional practice work with what I call a mechanism that also includes playing on the lack of control that is created by some sort of mechanical overwhelming of the performer, so that there's a certain amount of chaos created in a controlled environment, basically, and the sound code that arises from that is also, to me, always fascinating. I find those moments in this course to carry a special both aesthetics and meaning, you know, whatever that is, or just the experience. So if we go back to the question that I was setting, basically, perhaps the aspect of that question I wanted to shed light to was, you know, for someone that is perhaps starting with composition, beginning or aspiring to start composing, how do you see that theory, your theoretical work, how do you see that impacted the music, the development, the possibility of developing your composition?
I'm not sure if I did understand your question. My music is not being nobody is learning my music in conservatory because it's really new, so it doesn't exist. And I think that there is not one single studying of composition that knows my music in the conservatory, for sure not. So and I don't know if
perhaps a different question also. How did you have any mentors also working with you on how to do theory on your work? How
no.
to write theory? No, you didn't.
No. It's a completely individual research.
Mm-hmm. And any standard research methodologies that you employ, or is it simply you just went for it and worked your way through, or is there something that you literature that helped you realize how to craft your own theory?
My develop as a composer and the change I am doing in my work is driven by the quality things that I make to my work. Okay, so my main inspiration or my main source of change is my own opinion about my works. So each time that I finish I work, I say, oh, this is not good. I think that I could do this in a very different way. And this is what it's driving my process of change as a composer. And each time that I make a work, sometimes people make commentaries that make you see your music in a very different way, and they open you new paths for new works. That's clear.
So, if I understand you, there's plenty of opportunity in this practice itself to generate from that itself and work.
Yeah, sure.
Approaching the end of our conversation time, maybe a short message, again, for anyone that's, I would say, for the performers of your composition, for anyone that is aspiring to study composition, to practice composition, and to anyone that will now, after this, perhaps listening to this podcast, go to your website and open recordings of your music. What would you message these people?
Okay, to the first question is, please don't panic. Be happy. My last works are conceived as cooperative games between performance and machines. So it's a game. So you must enjoy. You must think that as perform, you must enjoy playing. That's all. Don't panic, play and enjoy. That's all. Don't try to control. Be happy. Making music that is what we all really like and what we all really love. That's all. Don't panic, enjoy. The second thing about people that are now in the conservatories, I don't know what to say. They have...
Maybe not in conservatories, maybe it's someone that's...
What are studying music, they can read my books. They can... I have wrote a lot of papers, a lot of articles, one book. It's open to any student that wants to see new possibilities. And what I would really recommend is think in terms of creativity. First, creativity. Second, creativity. Third. This is the main thing today. What should I do to make really a new forms of creativity in music? This is for me the most important thing today, and this is because of the competence with AI. Okay, so how can we still be competitive with AI in terms of creativity? This is whatever you want, tonal music, serial music. This for me, this not that doesn't matter. But what is the meaning of the word creativity? And for me, the main question is, how do you think you are going to be creative? That's all. It's my... And the third question, I would suggest that if anybody wants to listen one of my works, I will propose public stage that was premiered the last year in Shenzhen in China, and in this work it's created by live notation, in which 4 singers with a live notation system sing the notes that the attendees create by making feedback in a generative system. Okay, and I think that I like particularly this work. The performance was really great, and this is one of my suggestions, and the other one is the work that the Abeceda Institute performed, which is that I think that is as well a very interesting work to begin with, and from the criticism about this work, maybe create new things. For me, these two works are the most interesting of my production.
Great. Busevin, thank you for joining this synopsis. Lovely hearing everything you had to share with us, and